Sorry, I got cut out there again. But if we're looking at the names that they were looking to get, Clay went to the Mavs, and they just missed out on free agency again. Which has kind of been the story of the Lakers for a while. Before LeBron signed, they were hoping to get PG. That didn't happen. They were expected to pursue him or Kawhi, and then Kawhi went to the Raptors. PG went to the Thunder, and then they had another chance in free agency in 2019, and then Kawhi and Paul George both went to the LA rival. They went to the Clippers instead of the Lakers. And there's got to be a reason for that. The Lakers just aren't a great destination anymore for free agency. Even Clay, just like I just mentioned, he signed elsewhere. And if they were going to get a free agent, it was going to be the guy whose father played for the Lakers and who grew up in LA. So I don't know what exactly it is, but something about the Lakers has caused them to only sign one big-name free agent in the last, 10 years, and that's LeBron James. Listen, they traded for AD, which is great, but, of all the people that they have gone for, it's very little, And not to mention credit where credit's due. They won a ring with LeBron and AD. They didn't entirely fail with this, with their free agent search in the last decade, but they are kind of going downhill. LeBron and AD are both over 30 years old, and those are their two best players. LeBron, he signed a 2-year deal. He'll probably retire after that 2-year deal. I think he honestly was just trying to... I think if it were up to him, he may have retired this year if he didn't get the chance to play with his son. That's what I'm guessing. Obviously, I have no clue what he's truly considering as far as retirement goes, but yeah, they got maybe 2 more years of LeBron. Then by that time, AD, he's going to be in his early 30s, but remember, he's been an injury-prone player. He's gotten a lot of injuries. Therefore, his career is going to be much shorter than the average player of his caliber, let alone LeBron James, Because what LeBron's doing right now, as someone who's about to be 40, is rare, And, an NBA player of AD's caliber could probably last till their late 30s, 38, 39 or so, but when you're injured as much as he has been, you might get until 35. So you got 2 more years of LeBron, and then maybe after that, 2 more years of AD. It's kind of, if you don't either A, try to sign free agents to win a title in the next 2 years, so you don't come away with just 1 ring in this LeBron era, or B, start drafting to develop young talent like you used to do, even though the NBA is kind of moving in a different direction. But if you don't do one of those 2 things, the Lakers are going to be, the next 30 years of the Lakers are going to be way different than the first 30. So, let's shift to this. So, Paul George, he signed with the 76ers, max contract, and good for them, I guess. The Sixers, they've been successful the last few years. They made the playoffs. Haven't really gotten the job done. Embiid is not the same player in the playoffs as he is in the regular season. But they were the 7th seed, and honestly, the East was really competitive this year. Outside of the Celtics, obviously, but seeds 2 through 8 were all within 4 games of each other. So the Sixers, they're still up there in the East. And yeah, PG's a great talent, top 10 in the league, in my opinion. at his best at least. And Embiid, I would put in my top 7 probably, as far as players in the league, and Tyrese Maxey has great potential. And, Paul George, he was fantastic with the Pacers. He was an MVP candidate in 2019 with the Thunder. And then he went to the Clippers, and there was a lot of hype around the Clippers and the Lakers, and that really flopped pretty hard, Like especially with the Clippers, because at least the Lakers got a championship out of it. The Clippers, you can argue they had injuries, but so have every team deals with some sort of injury in the year. It's an 82-game season. It's pretty long to play the game of basketball. Every team deals with some sort of injury in the season, even with this load management that they do. And the Clippers, they came away empty in this Paul George Kawhi era, ultimately. They made the playoffs multiple times, but ultimately they kind of disappointed in that era. And when something goes wrong in Philadelphia, they're not going to blame Embiid. They're going to blame Paul George. He's going to be the guy that takes all the blame. Because Philly fans, they've gotten pretty attached to Joel Embiid in his years there. And he has done great things for them, but I think they have to realize his performance in the playoffs is why they haven't won in so long. But regardless, PG, I'm sure he considered that when he signed. So when they get to the playoffs and when they likely lose in the second round, I would guess, next year, he better be prepared to receive a lot of criticism. So let's shift to the football side of things. Malik Hooker of the Cowboys criticized Micah Parsons for his podcast. And the Cowboys, I've honestly never, part of me does feel bad for never saying anything good about them, but also there's not really a lot of good things I feel like saying about them because, listen, I have pointed out before that they've won 12 games each of the last 3 seasons. They do great in the regular season. They do. And this year, I honestly felt they were as legit a team as I've ever seen them. This was the first year where I genuinely thought they might be able to do something in the playoffs. But so there are positives to Dallas, even if I don't point them out too much. But right now they're just in kind of a mess. Even though they've won 36 games in the last 3 years in the regular season, in the playoffs they have one playoff win in the last 3 years. And after that playoff win, they lost. As much as I enjoyed seeing the Packers beat up on the Cowboys, they shouldn't have. The Cowboys should have been able to beat the Packers this year. At the minimum, in a pretty tough matchup. The Packers should not have been able to cruise by them that easily. But they did. This free agency this offseason has kind of been a mess for them. Jerry Jones got out saying, we're going to make big moves this offseason. We're going all in. And then nothing happening. Now there's locker room drama with Micah Parsons and the rest of the team, it seems. Which is, in all honesty, great for the media because they're going to eat that up. But for the Cowboys, they're going to be in a rough spot this year. And I guarantee you they'll probably win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games in the regular season still because they still have a lot of talent. But they don't have... There's going to be a rift in the team and it's going to screw them up in the playoffs again. yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to cover for football. Let's talk about Bronny James now, selected with the 55th overall pick in the draft, which is pretty much what I think everyone could have predicted would happen. There was no way anyone, unless they really wanted to screw with the Lakers, which if a team is professional, they wouldn't, and they didn't. So, Bronny, he fell to 55th. Lakers took him, and do I think he was talented enough to be drafted there? Not really. He averaged 4 points in college. But anyway, he said he isn't feeling pressure heading into it, and I mean, we really won't know. There's no way of knowing how good he'll be until he actually plays a real NBA game. A season, for that matter. Because even his first few games are probably going to be pretty shaky, but he still could develop into... I mean, he's not... I can't say he's going to be a star in the league. Because that's not what I think, and it's not likely. He's gonna... He's gonna have to spend at least a few years, to even... If you're averaging 4 points at the college level, it's hard for me to come out and say it's fine. At the NBA level, he's going to be much better. I can't say that. It wouldn't be logical. I don't think it's impossible, though. But I do think he has to take a few years to... He's going to need a few years of solid... really solid performances from him for me to change my mind on whether or not I think he can be a superstar in the league. I can't come out and say he'll be a star just because he's LeBron's son. If that were the case, every NBA superstar's son would be a star. If that were the case, Marcus Jordan would be one of the best NBA players ever. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how he does. I hope he does well. I don't want him to fail as a basketball player. But there's no way I can say he's going to be great. All right, so Jason Tatum, in other free agency news, agreed to a Supermax extension, which I think we all knew was going to happen, especially after Jaylen Brown was paid so much. And I do think Jaylen Brown has more to offer in the playoffs, but I do think Tatum is the face of the Celtics. So it makes sense that they would pay him that kind of money that they paid Jaylen Brown. And this is something a lot of analysts said when they pay Jaylen Brown that kind of money. Now that you paid him this, Tatum has a lot of leverage because he does offer more to the team as a whole. Jaylen Brown, he was the best player in the finals, and he, I think, is more responsible than Tatum was for bringing that finals home. But if it weren't for Jason Tatum's performances in the early postseason and in the regular season, they have no chance at making the finals. So, they did give Tatum a lot of leverage, but I think, the Celtics are very well ran. I think they knew that when they gave Jaylen Brown that money, they would have to do something similar for Tatum. So, we'll see how they do. I think the Celtics did a beautiful job this year, and I do think they're going to be contenders next year. I think them and Denver are the best built teams in the league right now. So, we'll see how they do. Speaking of the finals, the Mavericks made a sign and trade for Klay Thompson. And listen, he saw a huge decrease in production last year. So, he didn't get the kind of push he probably would have gotten a few years ago from a lot of teams. The Lakers were allegedly pursuing him, but obviously didn't wind up getting him. I think he could have helped them out because they are a very poor shooting team. But listen, I mean, Clay and the Warriors had a great run. 4 years in a row. They made the finals 5 years in a row, 4 of which they played the Cavs, and they won 3 out of the 4 against the Cavs. So they made 5 straight finals, won 3 of the 5. It is one of the best dynasties of all time. I really don't have a specific list for that, best dynasties ever, but they might be in the top 3. That Warriors team was fantastic. But listen, if I had to... He definitely made the right decision, Klay Thompson. And the Mavs, it can work for them too, so it kind of works both ways. Klay, I think, will be a solid role player. He's not going to be what he was in 2016 or 2017, but he'll do solid work for the Mavs. And like I said, if I were Klay and I had to choose between the Lakers, who last won the finals in 2020, and 2 of their stars are... Their 2 best players are an injury-prone 30-plus-year-old and a 40-year-old who seems to be on his way out. That's option 1. And option 2 is a team who just made the finals with a 25-year-old superstar who's only getting better. I would choose option 2. I'd rather be with a team with a young and up-and-coming superstar than be with a team with 2 older guys, one of which is injury-prone, who haven't won anything since 2020. So, yeah, I mean, I think good for the Mavs, good for Klay. I have no idea if they're going to replicate what they did this year in the postseason, but they'll be solid. They'll make the playoffs. That's no doubt. But can they beat Minnesota, Denver? The Thunder are getting better. Can they get through the gauntlet of the West again? That's the big question. All right. So Josh Jacobs of the new addition to Green Bay. He made news saying that Jordan Love is the next superstar of the league. And honestly, he showed a lot of promise last year. As I admitted, I did not like Jordan Love in the first 8 games last year, which I don't think anyone can blame me for. He was 3-5, 59% completion percentage, 8 interceptions in 8 games, 81 passer rating compared to his last 11 games, where he was 7-4, 68% completion percentage, only 5 interceptions, and 107 passer rating. So, he showed a lot of promise last year as far as what he can do in the league, but I think we should pump the brakes on calling him a superstar. I said the same thing about giving him an extension. 11 good games does not mean you're worthy of a contract. You got to have one full good year. And listen, if he does do that, his last 11 games, if he does what he did in his last 11 games this whole year, I would consider giving him an extension and calling him maybe a superstar. But definitely has to do a little bit more. All right, so the Giants GM says that this year is the year for Daniel Jones. Well, yeah, he has to because you paid him over your best player, Saquon Barkley. So, I hope he actually shows some improvement this year instead of what he's done the last few. And listen, last year was rough for Daniel Jones. I know he did get injured, but listen, even before that, he was 1-5 with 2 touchdowns and 6 picks and a 70 passer rating. I think the Giants just aren't. I don't know why they aren't aware that they made the wrong call here, but I feel like a broken record because I say this a lot. But the best year the Giants have had in the last decade is the year where they practically took the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands and gave it to Barkley. I don't think it's a coincidence that the last time they won a playoff game was when Daniel Jones only had 15 touchdowns. He had the ball less. That's how the Giants succeeded. You know, the Giant. Other than that, now that they don't have Barkley, I mean, without their running game, they really have to rely on Daniel Jones. And if I were them, I wouldn't be too confident in that. But hey, they know stuff that I don't. So maybe they'll prove me wrong. All right. So that would have been, I think, Monday through Wednesday. That was kind of a simplified version of Monday through Wednesday. Wednesday's podcast. After that, so okay, what I'm gonna do here is what I would have done on Thursday and Friday, and hopefully next week I can get podcasts in Tuesday and Friday is the plan. Maybe I'll do more of what I did this week and try to do some work on podcast for Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so that I can do. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll do what I can. But anyway, I wanted to open up the Thursday podcast talking about the Vikings and JJ McCarthy. And listen, I hate to say it as a Packers fan, but I do think the Vikings have a lot of promise. I think this year they're third in the division, I would say, because we don't even know. They might be starting. They might not even start JJ McCarthy. They might be starting Sam Darnold, which would put them in a. You know, they're not gonna be great with Sam Darnold as quarterback, but they are gonna show some promise. They do have Justin Jefferson. They do have Aaron Jones. They have a great offense. And they're in a weird way, they're kind of rebuilding with their new quarterback, JJ McCarthy. But they're also it's hard to say that they're rebuilding when they have Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones and Jordan Addison. But they kind of are, because you always need a great quarterback. You know, there's not a single good team in the league that doesn't have a good quarterback. The only team that I think is, I think the Niners are a great team with a good quarterback. You know, the Niners are the one team in the league that they don't really have a quarterback that matches the level of the team. But yeah, the Vikings, in a few years, they're going to be really solid. The NFC North is going to be a really good division for the next 5 years, I believe, with the Lions getting better and better. Same thing with Green Bay. They're just an evolving division in general. Even the Bears seem to be working some things out offensively. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right. So, forget what day it is, but what day it was. But last week, sometime, Jason McIntyre filled in for Colin Cowherd on the Herd, and he did a top 10, which was not very well received. I don't know. I thought I would run through it, see if I make any adjustments, but I think he has the right players in there. There's just some. The only thing I would change about the people in there is I would put Jaylen Brown in there. He was the Finals MVP for a reason. He's a very solid player. I think it's kind of criminal that he didn't get put in the top 10. Other than that, I think Jokic should be at 1 instead of he had Luka there at number 1. So I would flip him and Jokic. just because Luka doesn't play defense and Jokic does. Other than that, I think we forgot who Giannis was because he got injured. I would put Giannis at 2 or 3. I could be flexible there. But the big thing I think he got fixated on was that Kevin Durant wasn't on there, which I don't disagree with Kevin Durant not being on there, and I don't disagree with LeBron being towards the end, because I think what people of this generation, of my generation, have a tough time realizing is that LeBron and KD, they really are. I mean, LeBron is hardly top 10 right now in the league as it is. I would put him probably at 10 or 9. Just excuse me. Just because, he's still averaging 25, 7, and 7. So he's still very solid. But they're not the top 2 in the league like they were for years, But that's hard for this generation of basketball fans to let go. Because listen, we all know KD is a top 15, maybe top 12 player ever. LeBron, top 2. We all know that. What we all don't know is that they aren't the same players that they once were. They're not dominating the league anymore. So I would put LeBron maybe ahead. I would put him ahead of Jalen Brunson probably. But not ahead of Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, SGA. They all belong ahead of LeBron right now. So I'm not in entire disagreement with his list, So, okay. I have the list pulled up in front of me. So, Embiid, Joel Embiid is at 10. I would put him closer to the 7 range. I would push Brunson back a little bit. I guess you could probably convince me Brunson's better than LeBron right now, but Brunson can stay in the 8 to 10 range. Anthony Edwards can probably stay about where he is in the 5 to 7 range. Same with SGA. I would move Tatum back a little bit just because he's still kind of lacking in the playoffs. And Jaylen Brown would be in the 8 to 10 range as well. And then the top 3 is pretty much perfect except for the fact that I would put Jokic ahead of Luka. So not a horrible, not a terrible list. He has the right people there. Just personally, I would rework a little bit of the order, but yeah, that's my take on it at least. All right. So another thing I wanted to do this week was to kind of go over, kind of review where each NFL team stands right now, because I think I do kind of, when I simply just talk about one team, I talk myself into them being, because I can find a good thing about most teams, I think, in the league. There's probably 10 teams in the NFL that I can talk myself into them having a really good season, when in reality there's only going to be 5. So I just wanted to give an overview of where I feel each team stands right now. Starting with the Buccaneers, they lost their offensive coordinator, but I do think Baker Mayfield had a good comeback year last year. And they could, the bounce back year from Baker is really encouraging. They're not in a tough division at all. I think the Saints and Falcons are in a spot where they can be ahead of this the Bucs going into next year, but there is encouragement from Baker's bounce back year. As far as the Broncos, the Broncos, they're in a weird spot because, they don't know who they're going to start at their quarterback. So this year's not going to be fantastic for them, but they will get to a point. I do think this is Sean Payton's year to prove that he wasn't the one holding them back, which, listen, I have no idea if he was or not, but this is the year where Sean Payton can prove it wasn't his coaching. It was just kind of the crappy situation that Denver was in. But yeah, Bo Nix, I think, is a good pick for them. So I do think things are looking up for the Broncos. The Patriots are in a bad spot. They're just not going to be a good team this year. They're going to be fourth in their division. There's always those teams where they're going to finish last. They're not going to do much. The Patriots are one of those teams. They're going to be fourth in their division. They're not going to do much. But yeah, I mean, they did draft. They drafted a new quarterback, so we'll see how Drake May does. That's kind of the only exciting thing they got going for them right now. But yeah. The Giants, I'm low on the Giants. I really am. And I apologize, but they're just... They lost Saquon Barkley. They have a good defense, I'll give them that, but... Yeah, they lost their running game, which was kind of what held them. Kept them in a good spot last year. Or 2 years ago. They got to rely on Daniel Jones, who's really not great by any means. So I'm not high on the Giants this year. The Cardinals, they have Kyler Murray. He's very entertaining. A very promising player. But the Cardinals, the problem I have with them is their division. The Niners are always going to be the Niners, and the Rams are better than the Cardinals right now, roster-wise. The only team I can see the Cardinals beating in that division is the Seahawks, who are in a mess right now. The Raiders aren't looking good. They're just being the Raiders right now, and not the Raiders from the 70s. The Steelers are an interesting team. They really picked it up at the end of last year. Kenny Pickett seemed to be picking it up in his performance. So, they do have something to look forward to. Listen, they still have Mike Tomlin, and as long as they have Mike Tomlin, they're in for a winning season. The Saints are odd. Really don't know what to make of them at all. I like the Vikings. I think they're in position to make a big jump. The Washington Commanders are... With them, it's... Yeah, the Commanders... Listen, they got Jaden Daniels in the draft. We really don't know what he's going to look like. They did get Austin Eckler. Kind of fell off last year, but could always bounce back. We've seen what he can do at his best, so can't be too down on him. But yeah, the Commanders, I'm not too high on them. They're just, they're the Commanders. The Giants and Commanders are going to be at the bottom of the division. They're probably going to be fighting for the third spot, while the Cowboys and Eagles fight for the number one spot. Alright, the Panthers are the one team that I think could be worse than the... Why am I blanking? The Buccaneers. Listen. Bryce Young, had a pretty rough first year last year. And, the Panthers... it's just hard. I'm trying to find a way to say something positive about all of them. But the Panthers are just a team I can't really find a good thing to... I mean, J.C. Horn's good. That's all I really got for them. They're not really in a good spot right now. They're probably going to be last in their division. Just like the Patriots. So... yeah, the Titans, let's move on to them. The Titans, they're another team that's, like, not entirely sure what to make of them. They have Calvin Ridley, who is promising. They picked up Tony Pollard, who had injury problems last year, so we don't know how that's going to work. Will Levis showed some flashes last year, but nothing crazy. Nothing special. And also, I do think there's two teams in that division better than them. You know, the Colts and the... I think the Colts are going to be slightly better than the Titans. The Texans are going to be pretty good. And the Jags are going to be good. So I do think the Titans are in position to finish third or fourth, depending on how the Colts do with Anthony Richardson. I think the Jags and Texans are going to be the top of that division. So, you know, trust me, I will get to the teams that I'm actually pretty high on. I will. I'll be positive about some of them. Okay. So, where are we at? The Falcons? The Falcons made some improvements. I'm actually... The Falcons are trending upwards. They drafted Michael Penix, which could be good or bad. I do think they're going to sit him the first year and start Kirk Cousins for most of it. And Kirk Cousins is a solid player. He's not horrible. They have Drake London, who's promising. Bijan Robinson. They have a promising offense, honestly. Their defense defense still needs a little work, but yeah, they're what I'm looking forward to with the Falcons is their offense. Alright, where's the next? The Dolphins. The Dolphins are an offensive powerhouse. It's tough. The three... The Dolphins... The AFC North is going to be solid. Or no, AFC East, sorry. The AFC East is going to be... I mean, the AFC North is going to be great too, but... The AFC East, you know... The Jets are looking good if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. The Bills are going to take a bit of a drop, but they're still going to be the Bills. But the Dolphins, they are a great offensive team. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Tua. That big three is going to be very solid for them for a while. So... Listen, the only team I'm certain about in the AFC East is the Patriots. I'm certain that they're going to be awful. So, I mean, the other three are up. That's all going to be interchangeable. All right. The Rams are going to be good. They got Sean McVay, great coach. You know, they're... Like, as long as they have Sean McVay, they're not going to be a bad team. They had a really bad Super Bowl hangover that one time, but still, Stafford's pretty solid quarterback. Puka Nacua was a great rookie last year. Cooper Kupp is still a great wide receiver. Kyron Williams showed a lot of promise last year, so I can still see... I think they're second. I think they're good for second in the division, the Rams. Maybe fighting for a wild card spot. Okay, who else we got? The Bears are looking better. Caleb Williams, I do think, is going to be a good quarterback, but I did say the same about Justin Fields, and then he kind of wound up different spot. But Just the Bears have been getting more offensive weapons. Keenan Allen. They do have DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift. It's looking up for them. It is. It's looking up for the Bears for the first time in like 50 years. So we'll see how that works. I think the Colts are in an interesting position. Anthony Richardson, I do think is going. I think he showed a lot of promise last year before the injury. Right. So I think this year is going to be kind of his breakout, I guess. Michael Pittman is still a pretty productive receiver. Jonathan Taylor at running back. The Colts are probably going to be third in their division, just because the Texans and Jags exist, and I think they're a little bit better than the Colts. The Seahawks I don't like. They have Sam Howell as their quarterback. I mean, they do have some things to be excited about, I guess. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, they have pretty good weapons. Kenneth Walker at running back, it's... So they're not in the worst position, but they're definitely probably fourth in the NFC West, so... even though they have some talent, you can't have Sam Howell as your quarterback and be a good team in the NFL. The Bills are going to drop a bit, but they still, they got Josh Allen. That's kind of what I'm banking on right now, just the fact they have Josh Allen. I do think either the Dolphins or Jets will be first in the AFC East, just because the Bills seem to be declining each year. So, yeah, they're going to drop a bit. They'll probably still be a good team, just not great anymore. The Ravens are in a very good spot. They're coming off an AFC championship appearance. They signed Derrick Henry, which is going to be huge for them. Mark Andrews, Lamar, still great. So yeah, the Ravens, they're probably good for. I think they could be first in the AFC. But if the Chiefs stop being the Chiefs, but yeah, they'll be one of the top teams in the AFC again. I don't see them going down at all, especially after adding Derrick Henry. So. The Eagles, they fell off at the end of last year, the Eagles. I don't know what happened to them, but I do think they're going to bounce back a bit this year with the addition of Barkley. Still got A.J. Brown, still got Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts. Still got a lot of firepower. So, the Eagles, I think, are going to be first in the AFC East, or NFC East. Can't get my divisions right today. Because I do think they're better than the Cowboys. But we'll see. I don't know. They really were awful at the end of last year, so it's hard to say for sure. Okay. The Texans, they're going to be great. CJ Stroud, Stephon Diggs, they got a great offense. They're coming off of a very great underdog story last year, and they should be first in the division in the AFC South. The Cowboys will have another Cowboy year, where they do great in the regular season, lose in the playoffs first round. The Packers should be contenders, but I wouldn't say they're favorites. What's the difference? Contenders, I think, are people that will go to the playoffs, but there's no way I see them going to the Super Bowl. The Packers are one of those teams. I see them getting into the playoffs, maybe winning a playoff game or two, but they're not making it to the Super Bowl. The Chargers have promise. I feel like every year I say the Chargers should be good, and they just never are. It's crazy because Justin Herbert is Justin Herbert. So, you would think eventually they would make it work with them, but they just haven't. So, what do I think of the Chargers this year? The same thing I've thought the last few years. They have promise, but they might not deliver. The Jets, this is the team I'm probably going to talk about the most this year because they're just so interesting. The last few years, it's kind of been the same story with them, right? They have talent. They got Breece Hall, promising young running back. Garrett Wilson. Their O-line is improving. That's been the main problem, I think, for them the last few years. But their O-line is improving. Their defense is great. It has been the last, 5 years. Then you got the quarterback. That's been the one missing piece. They finally got Aaron Rodgers last year. He got injured in 4 snaps. So we pretty much all revolve. They have all the pieces. They really do. It all revolves around Aaron Rodgers staying healthy. It's awesome. It really is. Because they have to rely on a 40-year-old who just tore his Achilles to stay healthy. So listen, if he does stay healthy, which I hope he does, honestly, the Jets could be first in the division. I see that happening easily. They can. I don't know if they're. I really don't know how they're going to do in the playoffs because they haven't been there since 2010. I do know Aaron Rodgers is typically really good in the playoffs, despite the narrative. Although I do still blame him for the NFC Championship loss against the Bucs in 2021 because he had multiple times to capitalize on Tom Brady throwing 3 picks and he didn't. But listen, for the most part, Rodgers is a great playoff quarterback, and the Jets do have what they need to contend for a Super Bowl. They really do. They do have something the Packers never had, which is a top 5 defense. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. If Rodgers stays healthy, they could be great. So the favorites this year, the real favorites that I'm absolutely certain on are the Niners. Just made the Super Bowl. Still very good team. This Brandon Ayuk thing's kind of annoying, but they'll still be solid. The Chiefs, reigning Super Bowl champions, they're going to be a favorite. I got the Lions in there, coming off an NFC championship appearance. They should have a huge confidence boost. So they should be favorites. And I would probably throw the Ravens in there also. Niners, Chiefs, Lions, Ravens, and maybe the Bengals. I don't know. Last year was kind of weird for them. Burrow with the calf injury, but yeah. But remember, last time Burrow was healthy, they made the Super Bowl. And they beat Patrick Mahomes. There's only been 2 quarterbacks to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. It's Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. So, yeah, that's what I think of each team. Now we're going to move back onto the Cowboys. There was this big reaction to Dak wearing an ankle boot. And listen, there's a few theories I have for this. He had a fractured ankle in 2020. So either he re-aggravated the injury and he's using a boot now, or it's just maintenance for long-term ankle pain. Fractured ankle is tough to recover from, so he either re-aggravated it or he's just maintaining it. The Cowboys, like I said, they're just in a rough spot right now. This year, Micah Parsons, and Dak are all eligible for extension. And both Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb seem to not be showing up to camp without a contract. And the thing with CeeDee Lamb is he can get the money he's asking for. And they would be able to afford that if they weren't paying Dak so much. So I would just pay Dak restructure Dak's contract so you can pay for a top 5 receiver in the league. And stop paying a top 12 quarterback top 5 money. And they honestly could have asked him to take a pay cut months ago, but now Trevor Lawrence is getting the same money Dak Prescott is. So there's no way he's going to go for that. But yeah, we're going to see how that works out for them. All right. And here's the thing. They could have... I don't know. I feel like a broken record saying this, but they really did not have to pay Dak that much money. I think GMs out there, they get into their ego, right? And they try to stick, they do whatever they can to keep a quarterback. Because, your quarterback is generally supposed to be the star of your team. Right? So, when a GM makes the wrong call on a quarterback, which is such an important decision, they wait before they either ask them to take less money or trade them. They did not have to pay Dak that much money, ever. Never had to pay Ezekiel Elliott that much money, because they were never the best in the league at their position. They were never top 5. But the Cowboys, they didn't want to... They waited too long. They waited too long to give Dak an extension. They waited, and he got leverage, and they had to pay him that money to keep him. So... And this is kind of part of a thought I had the other day, where, with young quarterbacks that are recently drafted, teams also often get less for a young quarterback than what they would have if they traded them before. Let me give you an example so it makes more sense. The Jets got a 6th-round pick in return for Zach Wilson, which makes sense now, but if they traded Zach Wilson a year or two ago, they would have gotten more, because there's more promise. And if you don't believe me, the Niners got a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance, who I think was worse than Zach Wilson, to be honest with you. I think Zach Wilson has talent, I do, and he could be a lot better than he is. Trey Lance, what the Niners did right with him that a lot of teams aren't, is they saw in practice that Trey Lance wasn't better than Brock Purdy. So, they decided to trade him. And because they traded him when he had so little time on the field, because every other team, no other team is at practice. No other team sees Trey Lance performing so poorly. Right? So they only saw him in the few games that he played. That's why the Niners got a 4th-round pick for him. Because there's no reason for any team to think anything other than the fact that, Trey Lance, he probably has talent, probably has promise. That's all teams know. They don't know. They aren't at practice. They don't see what Kyle Shanahan sees, which is that Trey Lance isn't fit to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Whereas with Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, they started multiple seasons. And teams saw, okay, these guys are really bad, probably better as backups. So instead of getting a 4th-round pick, and I know it's not a big difference, but instead of getting a 4th-round pick, these teams have to settle for 6th or 7th-round picks because they waited so long to admit that they were wrong on the quarterback they drafted. All right. So Cam Newton said that Lamar Jackson is the best dual threat quarterback in NFL history. To be honest, there's not much competition. Michael Vick was more of a running back than a dual threat quarterback. Cam Newton is probably the best competition for Lamar at being the best dual threat quarterback. The only thing that holds Lamar back is the postseason, to be honest with you. You know, if you look in the regular season, he's 58-19. He has a 64% completion percentage, 125 touchdowns, 45 picks, and a 98 passer rating. In the postseason, he's 2-4, 57% completion percentage, 6-6 touchdown interception ratio, and a 75 passer rating. So, his only thing is the postseason, which honestly Cam never had. He had one good year in the postseason, where he only had to play 2 games and then got absolutely crushed in the Super Bowl by the Broncos. And honestly, Lamar's big shot last year to prove himself in the postseason was to beat the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl. That was his shot, and he didn't deliver. And listen, I'm not bashing him for losing to the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. I'm not. I'm just saying he had a chance at proving himself in the postseason, and he still could. He's still a young player, but that's the one thing holding him back, is the postseason. And honestly, Cam, he was never really great in general. He was very hot and cold. He never had back-to-back winning seasons, Cam Newton. Whereas Lamar has had only winning seasons since he entered the league. 58-19, that's that's probably a 75% winning percentage or so, if I had to guess. So, yeah, Lamar Jackson, definitely the best dual threat quarterback to play. I do hope he wins more in the playoffs and one day wins the Super Bowl. All right, so Joe Burrow is excited about different personnel groupings that the Bengals can use. And like I said earlier, I still think they have a shot at a Super Bowl this year. Because listen, they made the AFC Championship 2 years ago, lost to the Chiefs. And the year before that, they beat the Chiefs. They did. And that was a big upset. And then the year later, they went toe-to-toe again. They just didn't win that time. Which happens. The Patriots, they didn't win every year with Tom Brady. And while that's kind of the extreme comparison, I think you know what I mean. Just because they lost that one doesn't mean they're dead. That doesn't mean they're dead now. Last year they had injuries with Burrow. They didn't just have injuries. They had Burrow injured. They had their star quarterback out for a while. They were greatly hindered by that. So yeah, I think they have a real shot at the Super Bowl this year. I do think they're a top 3 team in the AFC with the Ravens and Chiefs. So yeah, I'll see. I would love to see them make the Super Bowl again this year and win it all, because they got really close last time and then came up short. But with that, let's shift back to the... Actually, no. We'll do this, then we'll do the last segment in the NBA. So I want to talk about Brandon Ayuk. So yeah, the Niners, they are, in my opinion, the best roster in the league. They're very well coached. They have CMC, best running back in the league by far. And they have all they need to be in a Super Bowl this year again. It's just Brandon Ayuk drama is kind of screwing with them a bit. And And yes, they're a solid team without Brandon Ayuk, but having him on the team is incredibly beneficial to them. Brock Purdy works very well in this system. In Kyle Shanahan's system with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Losing Brandon Ayuk would have an effect on them. There's no doubting that. And I do. On one hand, I do think they should do whatever they can to keep him, but also he's kind of being a little annoying, Brandon Ayuk, at this point. But I think they just got to come to terms, honestly. I don't think Brandon Ayuk is the same without the Niners, and vice versa. So, if I'm either Brandon Ayuk or the Niners, I'm fighting to stay. There's no reason to... I just think this is all unnecessary. This whole back and forth. This whole standoff. So with that, let's just do our last segment of the day, shifting to the Warriors signing and trading for Buddy Hield. He's a great shooter. Shoots 40%. So he mixes right in with the Warriors style. And he actually has the most three-pointers in the last 5 seasons of any NBA player, just ahead of Curry. Curry's a little bit behind him because he was injured in 2020, I believe it was, when he had the broken hand. So yeah, if it weren't for that, Curry would be way ahead. But nonetheless, Buddy Hield at the top of the league, 3-point shooting wise. And he's very underrated. His big problem is he doesn't play any defense. So that's the one thing that hinders him. But he really does mix right in with Golden State's style of play. Of passing, ball movement, shooting. So he'll be great there. I honestly thought the Lakers should try to push for him. I did say earlier in the show, I don't get the Lakers' free agency process because they just keep whiffing on everybody. I don't think they were pushing for Buddy Hield, but I do think they should have. Shooting is something they definitely need. But, listen, it's not my problem. But, anyway, this was Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, or iHeartRadio. Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. I will see you guys Tuesday is the plan. Next week the plan is Tuesday and Friday because I have college visits the other days. And maybe get one on the weekend. I'll see how it works. I'll let you guys know on Friday if I am going to do one on the weekend. That is a promise. But yeah, Tuesday and Friday next week is what it's looking like. So with that being said, Dylan Miller, Daily Dose of Dylan, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. Have a good one.